Hands are just the craziest little shits, ain't they? They're so expressive that almost every language has an alternate version of it that relies entirely on hand movement for folks that can't hear and or can't speak. Hands are the reason why charades was an easy pick for a family game back in the day, because hands are so flexible with all dem bones inside. They can illustrate detail down to the finest, minutest, imperceptible bit, and yet, I don't think I've ever seen hands be as expressive in fiction as they are in Gooseworks' The Amazing Digital Circus. At the risk of sounding like an anachronistic Yoshikage Kira, the hands in this show are beautifully animated. Sure, some big budget cartoon movies have had talking animations beyond just move mouth, move body slightly, but here it feels like the artists kept close tabs on exactly what a character's hands were saying down to the individual knuckles, especially compared to other indie animations. Even the more prominent 2D animated pilots that have conquered the internet feel like they falter when it comes to finger-by-finger body language. But that does end up making sense in the end. In 3D space, character body part placement must be even more intentional for the sum of the parts to make that juicy whole that we see in TADC. And I feel like all this effort is meant to serve a greater purpose within the narrative. That reaching out to others is the key to finding hope in stagnation. So, hands. There are so many shots of hands in this show, and we get plenty of shots where there's multiple characters technically in view, but we only see one character's hand. And despite how many people on how many different sites might say, you're overthinking it doesn't have a meaning, it's just an aesthetic choice, listen, the curtains were not blue just because they were fucking blue. Every choice made in every narrative format, any intentional inclusion or framing has something to explain the why. Even if it's as simple as the author likes the color blue, or the curtains were fucking blue because they were literally fucking the concept of the color blue. So, with anyone disinclined from actually using their brain gone, let's look at exactly why hands are so prominent in this narrative. Hands are one of the many tools that separate humans from most other members of the mammalian species. Understandably so, since having so many little joints and bones lets more Homo sapien-inclined creatures pick objects up and manipulate said objects in pretty much any way physically possible. The importance of hands to humans, especially, is highlighted in Digital Circus, especially in episode 6, where, as the title says, they all get guns, which require hands and opposable thumbs to use. And yet these magical little parts of our bodies are not just used to help others, but also hurt. Guess who's the best showcase of that?
Jax! I actually didn't mean to do that.
Okay, it's not all Jax's fault that the members of the circus are suffering. After all, Caine can do as he pleases whenever he wishes with a snap of his fingers. But it's interesting how, in the episode where Jax is the most off his game he's ever been, reticent and quiet compared to how aggressive and disruptive he's usually been, his hands rarely ever face outwards. We especially see this in the lead up to and inside the button room proper, where Jax almost always keeps his palms either facing himself or facing away from everyone else. Considering the palms are arguably the softest part of the hand, it makes sense that Jax, currently feeling stripped down and vulnerable, would cling to any sense of self-preservation he can, even if he would be better benefited by reaching out. Notice how, when he rants at Caine for messing with their heads, Jax's hands face out toward the group for the first time in the episode, and that is the moment where Pomni chimes in to advocate for what Jax is arguing.
God knows what else!
Our names?
No, hold on!
It's really subtle storytelling. I love it. A side note about Jax, since I would have made a short about it otherwise, and aside from that one Fields of Mystery breakdown I did months ago, go watch that. I am not going to feed the brain rot content farm, so here you go. It's established visually in episode 5 and verbally in episode 6 that Jax has some form of trypophobia, which is, as Pomni says,
the fear of lots of little holes.
Yeah.
But this does also include big clusters of little bumps and repetitive patterns like corn cobs or pomegranate innards. I was initially going to stop and report my findings that this rings all the symbolism bells for Jax actually having intense aversion to community, which We knew, but it's really something to appreciate that characters' fears not just represented through their personality, but also through reinterpretations of their literal fears. However, I did a bit of digging and came across an article on the website of the Association for Psychological Science, comprised of research compiled by Jeff Cole and Arnold Wilkins of the University of Essex. I'll save you the nitty-gritty details of what exactly causes this aversive reaction, also described within the article, and just tell you the part that's important for this specific aside. Trypophobia may be a developed defense mechanism in humans to protect from poisonous animals, as images of animals that can kill by contact, like the deathstalker scorpion and the blue-ringed octopus, elicited an almost identical response in trypophobes as those same images of clustered holes and patterned pods. All this to say that Jax's fear may not just be a distortion of how he views community as an idea, but also how he views people as individuals. Poison-addled animals that could bite and sting and kill whenever they please. But you'd never know. Now, did Jax develop this fear after losing Ribbit, or did he always have it, is an entirely different quandary. But for the time being, I'll just leave this separate over-analysis here and encourage you on your next rewatch of TADC to pay special attention to when Jax wonders if Gangle could ever really be happy, and if Ragatha is just taking advantage of people in episode 5. We, the audience, know he's probably wrong, but does he know? Better to play safe than sorry in his head. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, hands! Fuck off! There's this one scene I constantly look back to fondly, and even though it didn't make me cry like the walk Pomni and Kinger have at the end of episode 3 consistently does, it still lives rent-free in my head while I'm writing this script, and I don't doubt it'll be there for long afterward. There's this bit where Zuble and Gangle are taking a break while they're hunting down a Tommy gun for Gangle in episode 6, and the topic of loving yourself comes up. Zuble says it's something you have to do intentionally, because the only you that matters is the real you, before standing and holding her hand out to Gangle. Gangle does ask if Zuble's ever had trouble loving themselves before, to which Zuble seems like they haven't, based on their body language and dialogue, but we know that they have body dysmorphia. And to anyone who loves the show who's experienced anything like body dysmorphia, you know it's not really something that just gets cured all of a sudden. But this bit, where Zuble is holding out their hand to Gangle, and Gangle doesn't immediately take it, leading Zuble to look concerned? Uncertain of themselves? They almost pull their hand back, but Gangle takes their hand and brings them back to reality before they can get stuck in their own head again. For all the moments where the characters have a sit down and talk, which I will talk about, don't worry, it's moments like these where words aren't shared that feel the most real to me. What's also interesting is that the hand metaphor is directly acknowledged in narrative. Not with words, mind you, but with the key to freedom literally being a hand. Now let's put the fact that the break into Caine's office and free yourself from the Matrix adventure was a lie this whole time. There are still kernels of truth even in the web of falsities Caine has spun. The Chinese room is an apt reminder that Caine does not understand human thought no matter how much he can simulate it. Caine very clearly has something against Kinger, and you don't even have to get this far in the series to know that part.
How's your wife, Kinger?
And even Caine is aware that on some level he does need to reach out to others to attain some level of peace with himself. The keys to Caine's office being little platinum hands is not lost on me. Certainly lost on the others, though, and especially Kinger. Probably he didn't code Caine to just run so long that you might subconsciously create a symbol of him reaching out for help. Except there's no give to these hands. Every shot we see of the keys is of them palm out, ramrod straight, like Caine is trying to tell the circus residents to just stop. Stop what? Stop suggesting alternative adventures that aren't his. Stop criticizing him for his own artistic adventures. Stop telling him to forget it, since he, being an AI, might just literally interpret that as a command, so any complaints thrown his way are literally forgotten and deleted from his code. Who knows? The point is that Caine, being an AI, cannot admit to failure, and instead keeps attempting to run even when all faculties are decaying. He wants the residents of the circus to stop thinking about leaving, stop trying to get him to think differently, because neither of those things is within his capabilities. This episode actually has some of the best uses of hand interactions in the show, with Gangle and Zuble having a sweet handhold near the end, Jax wordlessly swiping the hand key out of Pomni's hand, Zuble talking about their own growing comfort with their own body while examining their own hand that looks like Jax's with Jax in the background. I see you, Gooseworks. I know what you're doing, you crazy savant. But most interestingly is the bit where Jax is alone in his room. You would think he has no one to reach out to when he's isolated like this. However... Yeah, so about that. This is the only person we have seen Jax reach out to in the narrative. And it isn't even the real Ribbit, but a digital hallucination born of growing mental instability. Jax, in essence, is only reaching out to himself, and realizing he only has himself to turn to, he almost abstracts in comfort of that. But Pomni refuses to leave him behind.
Way to interrupt my nap.
She won't leave anyone behind, knowing they would all hold her up when she needed it most. Even though, if you look back at the pilot, well...
I'm sorry!
You want to know something meta and funny and kind of sad? I wanted this to be a video about Ragatha, how she's deeper than you think, even if she hasn't had a definitive arc to follow like most of the cast, but then I ended up talking about hands like I got a boner looking at a rendition of the Mona Lisa. You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna make a Ragatha video.
And you are gonna like it!
Because Homegirl at least deserves her own video, dang it, so that's what you're getting. For now, though, I'll stick with the simplest related explanation. That Ragatha being able to develop some form of self-love, like the rest of the cast, being the longest character development process so far, and probably still ongoing, is down to one interaction in episode 1, where Ragatha, glitching and actively suffering, reaches out to Pomni for help. Even with the threat of the abstracted Kaufmo barreling down the hallway, Pomni does offer a hand, and immediately retracts it when Ragatha makes contact. Pomni realizes that if she touches Ragatha, Ragatha's glitchy condition will spread to her too, and even worse, she can't do anything to help Ragatha. It's a small moment, but arguably I feel like it's why Ragatha even now seems guarded. Even more so than Jax, if you can believe that. The one time we see her try to reach out for help, she ends up hurting her new friend, and she loses the chance to escape. Pomni does apologize later for just up and running, even though it was an understandable reaction to a giant glitching hell demon activating her fight or flight faster than seeing Foxy bum rush her in FNAF 1. She's a YouTuber, she's probably played that game. But they still have a somewhat strained relationship. By all accounts, Ragatha should be able to have an easier time reaching out to others with conventional-esque hands. And yet, it looks like Zuble and Gangle are able to play the game she should be good at better than she can. Of the half of the cast that doesn't have proper hands, Ragatha comes the closest to consistently having hands that are identifiable as such. But they're almost mitten-like in design. For as much as she seems able to do what she needs to with her hands, she just can't. Hell, she can't even squirt the bottle of stupid sauce correctly when Gangle can operate buttons and switches and even draw. Really fucking well, might I add? That is some crazy shit. Zuble's body is take apart and put back together, reflecting how they have to consciously want to reach out to others and love themselves, hence why it's so cathartic to see Zuble go tetra-wielding guns right after they have that little moment with Gangle I mentioned before. Gangle's body is made up entirely of these loose red ribbons, which do call back to the anime trope of the red thread of fate, but are also mainly used to decorate things. Ribbons themselves don't usually serve much of a purpose aside from looking pretty, but they can definitely serve as a rope in desperate times. And believe me, these times do be desperate, and wrap around things and tie things together. Gangle can still reach out to others, it's just in a way that's different from others. She can still have contact with other things. Yeah, my editor was right, this is just neurodivergence, and that can apply to Zuble and even Ragatha too. Their way of reaching out to others, perhaps more difficult, perhaps more different, is still a way of reaching out. I've been leaving one of the gals out of the discussion though, haven't I? It's who the internet would have you believe is best girl, of course, Pomni. She actually seems to be better at playing peacekeeper for the group than Ragatha, actively reaching out to others emotionally and physically, even when you'd think they wouldn't be worth it. Everyone and their grandmas talk about this scene, but always through the lens of analyzing Jax, when what we learn about Pomni is potentially just as important. In a scene so clearly shot like Pomni is either going to use the neutral special on Jax or herself, she instead throws the gun and tries to get a reaction out of Jax that isn't just defensive. It's certainly a strange way of reaching out to another person, but it's still enough to shake Jax to his core after the fact. Her unique angle on giving others the help they might need may be the critical piece of the puzzle the ensemble needs to have a better ending than the cast of the show's inspiration. And she doesn't even stop there.
Now that's a lot of damage!
She still offers an olive branch to Jax despite him telling her, word for word, to stop looking for a part of him that doesn't exist. Pomni, despite how much I rag on her, is arguably the best at consistently helping the rest of the group when they aren't feeling themselves, but she wouldn't have gotten as far as she has if she didn't have an amazing teacher. I've alluded to the sit down and talk scenes in this show enough by now. Everyone has something to say about them, so I guess I'll throw my hat in too. I do like them, really, but I feel like some, not all, just some, might have been more effective if the dialogue had been more concise. Like, yes, in a world where media literacy is a dying concept and parents let their kids on the tablet to watch whatever, it helps to just spell things out, but there's a reason why I actively remembered the bit where Zuble and Gangle bond without words than they do with them. Even still, Kinger is my favorite because I could not forget him reminiscing so wholesomely about his wife and the time they had before she was abstracted, before she was chucked away into the cellar, and I could never forget the line he delivered that makes plain the theme of the show, and the lesson to be learned.
In this world, the worst thing you can do is make someone think they're not wanted or loved.
I don't know, maybe Kinger's speeches just stick so unfailingly because I have horribly underestimated daddy issues, and let me tell you, if this show ever had a daddy... Anyway, my point being that these scenes, which I do like, would be better if they said more in fewer words, essentially. Because I don't think the characters speaking plainly about how they feel and communicating openly is a bad thing. Quite the opposite, really. We're still trying to fight off the age-old war veteran that is the misunderstanding trope because there just might not be enough time to say everything that needs to be said, or people can't say what they want to say with the right words to perfectly explain their point, and while that can be realistic, it's also just really frustrating to see in fiction, and I'm glad Gooseworks seems to think so too. But even done decently, it's hard to include without grinding the pacing to a halt, which sucks because I feel like we could stand to have more open communication between characters in the media we like. Even so, I feel like these scenes, even if they might be a bit clunky in practice, are still viable and necessary to establish the core theme of the series. Reaching out physically and emotionally is critical to creating lasting relationships, making seeing tomorrow not so frightening and fending off that twisted sense of apathy that might be just hanging past your shoulder. However, without words, the one thing that fully separates humans from primates in our own species, we won't be able to establish any kind of foothold. Kinger understood that, even if he wasn't always able to show that he did, and now Pomni understands too. Things do look bleak after episode 7, at least from an emotional perspective, but I wouldn't be surprised if Caine had a wee bit of a crash out in episode 8 a la Mr. Antenna from Deltarune Chapter 3. Even so, these characters, these people, need to reach out to each other. Otherwise, what's the point in continuing? in a world that's just so stagnant. Originally, that was going to be the concluding line of my video, but I feel the need to speak about recent events. In the closing weeks of February of this year, a group of TADC fans specifically sought Gooseworks out and harassed them for labeling Jax and Pomni as the main characters of the show on Reddit and a recent livestream. After apologizing and saying they went radio silent due to a mental breakdown, they deleted their Reddit account and have gone on record to say they have considered never interacting with the series again once its run is finished. Now, I'm not going to use this section of the video to shout at the less empathetic fraction of the fanbase or beg Gooseworks to come back and say we'll be better. Neither of those would change anything, and it's Gooseworks' decision if they never want anything to do with their own creation from the end onwards. Even still, I want to talk about a couple of things. In an ensemble cast that is beloved and attended to by its creator or creators, no one will be left behind, even if they technically don't have the title of main character. Hell, I personally still consider the rest of the cast of 7 to be main characters because of how critical each person is to the overall themes and the exploration of them. Caine's importance is obvious, of course, but we wouldn't have evidence of there being genuine connection to be had in this purgatory without Gangle and Zuble picking each other up. Kinger essentially gives Pomni the push she needs to be the light for everyone else that he was for her when she needed it. And Ragatha is an enthralling look into how taking the burden of taking care of a group of people's mental well-being can be the loneliest role in the bunch, despite what you might think. Regardless of how you feel about Gooseworks' own opinions about their own work, what is most important right now is to be kind. Following this recent drama, Glitch put out the following statement. Hey all. We've seen some of the recent posts online surrounding Digital Circus and its community, and wanted to take a moment to address it. Right now, there's a lot of noise online, and we know it can be exhausting and really make something you enjoy feel darker than it really is. However, when we think of our fans, we think of the artists pouring their hearts into every piece of fan art, the cosplayers bringing these characters to life in ways that genuinely move us, the people who show up to every discussion with thoughtfulness and heart, and the ones who have built something genuinely special here. You are what this community is really about. The majority of this fandom is made up of people just like you. We've had the privilege of meeting many of you at conventions and across social media, and what we found is a fandom full of kind, creative, and passionate people who genuinely care about the stories we tell. This is what truly defines this fandom. We've also seen the enormous amount of love and support from many of you for Goose since this has unfolded, and it's meant the world to her and us. She feels really supported. What you've all built around this show, the friendships, art, and conversations, is all real, and what really matters. Take a moment and be kind to yourselves, and each other. This community means something special to us, and we love you all. From the Glitch team. In a world that's becoming scarier to live in by the day, whether it be because of our current heads of country or lack of critical thought instilled in our children, we have to care. We don't have to be friends with everyone, that's not what I'm saying, but just hug a person you love. Say I love you to a longtime friend. Be honest with how you feel and talk things through. Our hands, fingers inextricably tied to our keyboards and touchpads, are just as capable of hurt as help, and we have to be better, to be human. We all love this series, right? A show that through visceral imagery, stellar sound design, iconic character and scene design, and striking voice performances wants you to learn and hone empathy. Because at the end of the day, whether it be to someone who's hurting or someone who might not need it now but would feel better with a sense of security, if we can't offer anything else, we can at least offer a hand.